All right, Gearheads, welcome to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM post-qualifying show for the Hungarian Grand Prix. We have Lando Norris on pole. This is Jon Massengale, and I'm joined by Bob Varsha, and we'll be joined by Chris Medland, who's live at the Hungaroring here shortly. Bob, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great now. Always better after a qualifying session like that one. I mean, that had a little of everything, including rain.
Yeah, I did. In fact, there was times where I thought, "Oh, this is going to be boring," but I'm glad I thought that because I jinxed it into a fantastic qualifying. There was lots to talk about in all three sessions.
Yeah, it was really, like I said, there was a little bit of everything. I mean, when you see Perez and Leclerc going off for the big teams on the same weekend, and then Russell goes out and he's underfueled to do as many laps as he needed to, which is a horrible misstep by Mercedes.
Yeah.
Just one thing after another. All these things you never expected to see happened. And then, of course, McLaren coming to the fore once again on a track where they were sort of expected to be good, but, against the likes of Red Bull, what's going to happen? And so they sweep the front row, and Lando Norris really seems to be coming into his own right now. That's good to see.
Man, he really does. And I think maybe the big surprise for me was there was so much discussion about the Red Bull upgrades for specifically for Max Verstappen's car. And we didn't see any major leap from Verstappen because, when he went up 3/10 there in Q3, I thought, here we go. It looks like Max is going to dominate. And then immediately Lando jumped him by 3/10. So it looks like the normal services resumed of what we've seen over about the last 5 or 6 races.
Yeah, we heard him in his post-race interview saying, I needed more grip. I didn't have it. And every driver knows that feeling when you feel you've got more in the car and in yourself, but the thing just will not stick. And they showed replays of some of the adjustments drivers were having to make. And they were minute. And drivers like Julian Palmer and Martin Brundle and David Coulthard will say, "Wow, that was a big moment." You think that was a big moment? It was just this little twitch, but it kills the car and it kills your lap time.
Yeah, and I want to look at going back a couple of sessions here on Q1 when George Russell ended up eliminated in Q1. I think that was maybe the biggest surprise of the whole qualifying. I mean, and then Hamilton barely making it through. I don't know what's going on with the Mercedes right now.
Yeah, that was, as I say, it was just such an odd mistake for someone like Mercedes to make, knowing how close the top four teams are right now. You want to have every element of qualifying on your side. So why you would send him out down at least one full lap on fuel? I thought George was very well mannered on the radio as he came around and said, somebody explain to me why we're under fueled for these laps.
Yeah, he could have said that in a very different way. That's true. Yeah. But yeah, the rain in and out. I don't know. Chris Medland will be joining us soon, and maybe he'll give us some insight. But I don't know what's expected for tomorrow. But the rain, of course, today threw us off back and forth. When they first started the qualifying, they all started on slicks, and I thought, oh well, it was just raining 5 minutes ago. Are they going to be okay? And the track looked reasonably dry. And then immediately we start seeing sprinkles and changing up everything.
Yeah, it loses its grip quickly, does the Hungaroring, but it also gains it very quickly. You could see that it was quite warm, judging what people were wearing in the stands. And even though the track is in a kind of a bowl, the flags were flapping, so there was a breeze blowing, and that's always good for drying the track out. But there were some good trends in the way teams are improving right now, and some bad ones. I mean, Sergio Perez, 4 times in the last 6 races, he's failed to get out of Q1. McLaren doing so well. Sainz continues to outperform Leclerc. It's really weird. Sonoda, who recently said it's weird if Red Bull puts Liam Lawson into the varsity, the A team alongside Max, and not put me there. I thought, well, that's a bold statement from a guy. And then he goes out and destroys the car in qualifying. That's a very bad trend.
I like that you brought up the words that he chose were weird.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird that I'm not going to be the one chosen since I've been doing better than everybody else, I think is what he was trying to say. But
yeah, not so much.
Hey, we looks like we have Chris Medland. Hey, Chris, how are you, sir? How's it going out there?
Hello, team. It's not too bad. It's obviously all a bit later than we planned, isn't it? But I've just made my way down to McLaren to see if I can get some words of reaction from them after that session. I can tell you, though, for anyone who hasn't been following too closely this weekend, you remember how this team had problems with its motorhome hospitality unit in Spain. They had a fire, and Lando Norris went and put it on pole position off the back of that. Well, on Thursday, we got here, and the roof was off because a storm hit on Wednesday afternoon at the circuit. Massive hailstones, huge high winds, came out of nowhere. No one was expecting it. And the roof wasn't on properly yet at that time. It got ripped off and did a lot of damage to the McLaren motorhome again. It's basically out of action again to everyone except certain team members. And Oscar Piastri said on Thursday, well, we ended up on pole with that last time. So who knows? Well, yeah, he's right. 1-2 today.
I think they'll take that every time, Chris. I think they'll take motorhome damage for a pole position. They'll take that trade every week.
Right. They'll go to Belgium next week and they'll find Norris and Piastri out there in the middle of the night hammering the hospitality unit to put it out of commission again.
Exactly. Yeah, they'll be putting bricks through the windows.
Mm-hmm. Chris, we were talking about the rain but Bob mentioned it, but it's been really warm and we were afraid that it could be like record warm, but tell us what it looks like now and what's supposed to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, it's been a bit strange, actually, because it has been so hot. As I say, we had this huge thunderstorm that hit on Wednesday afternoon. I think just kind of bubbled up out of nowhere. People weren't really expecting it. And that does sometimes happen here in Budapest. It's kind of, you're actually very, very central in Europe. So we do get some strange weather systems sometimes. And today was meant to be fairly hot again, sort of maybe low 90s. But the sun's just not really come out at any point. It clouded over this morning and stayed cloudy, and then some of that turned into a bit of rain that, again, the teams weren't expecting. So I'm thinking we're going to see similar tomorrow to what we've had today. There might be a few more sunny spells that mean it's going to be warmer, but not as hot as they had yesterday or on Thursday when it was really, really hot. Yeah, mid 90s. I ran the track on Thursday night and regretted it. I can tell you that. It was stifling here, and everyone was preparing themselves for a real challenge. But I think that will have subsided a little bit.
Well, I know that Chris. I know that the crowd, it looked like they were, like Bob said, I think earlier, they were dressed for the warm. But I want to ask about the crowd and a front row lockout for McLaren. I don't know if this was anybody was expecting it, but I thought I heard it seemed like a big crowd screaming for the McLaren team. Was that my imagination?
Nope, you're spot on with that. That was how we knew who had gone fastest, because when Norris beat Verstappen each time and went to the top of the timing screens, the noise was huge outside the media center, and the screens are on a bit of a delay. So obviously the screens also for everyone watching, back at home, you're on a delay as well, but we're even on a delay here. So we knew based on the fans reacting outside about a second or two before actually the car crossed the line on the TV screen. So it was quite clear who they wanted to be quick this weekend. And let's be fair though, McLaren have looked fastest all weekend. From FP2, I'd say, FP1 was solid, but FP2 they looked clearly the quickest car, carried that into FP3 and then qualifying. And I think they will have been worried by the weather. They'll have been worried that the rain could have mixed things up. And fortunately for them, it didn't trip them up. And they managed to put it all together and get their laps in at the right time as well to secure that first front row lockout since, if I'm right in saying, it's Brazil 2012. So 12 years.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty amazing when the general gist of what the media is saying is, why didn't McLaren win this race? Why didn't they win that race? Obviously, everybody recognizes that McLaren is a force right now, and it's up on the pit wall that's kind of holding them back right now with the tire issues in Montreal and then Austria and then Silverstone. It's a good problem to have, I guess is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. It's been the car is so good now, and that's why we're starting to put that pressure on this McLaren team to deliver the results with the car. But it's by far the hardest thing to do is to build a car quick enough. And everyone's trying to do it, but you see the ups and downs. Ferrari and Mercedes just don't seem to be quite there this weekend. And even Red Bull scrambling to try and get on terms. And we've got to keep giving credit to that guy, Max Verstappen, for every time he seems to pull it out, doesn't he? He puts something special down in terms of the lap. He was so close to pole still here. And to be honest, from what we've seen in practice, that car looks a good 2 or 3 tenths off the McLaren. I genuinely do think that Verstappen's the one who's put it in the frame, and that it really shouldn't be.
Yeah, and Chris, what happened to these big upgrades? I was talking about it earlier, right before you came on, but what happened to the big upgrades for Max Verstappen's car that we were thinking that could really make a big difference?
Well, I think they've improved things in some ways. I mean, it'll be interesting actually to hear what Max has to say when he's done in the press conference, which is where they're headed now, I think. But he's probably going to be saying, it's made an improvement, but not enough. And he did hint that if it didn't really put them back at the front and move them ahead of everyone again, it could be a really tough rest of the season, because it means they're not quite getting everything that they were hoping to out of this car. But at the same time, with the temperatures that we had yesterday, with the track conditions, it was tricky. I think teams would have maybe struggled to fully learn everything they wanted to, and maybe the setup wasn't perfect. As we've already alluded to, it's much cooler today. We've had that drizzle around. That makes it tough as well. So I think the benefit of these 2 race weekends back to back is when we'll weekends whether the upgrades have really done their job. But I just don't think Red Bull now have the capacity to pull clear of this chasing pack anymore. I think everyone else knows the direction path they're on in general. Ferrari have had some mistakes, but they're rectifying those. But McLaren have been very, very solid at developing their car. They know what they need to do to make it quicker. They keep doing it, but they also have the benefit of more wind tunnel and CFD testing time.
Right.
Scale that you have.
Let's not forget that Verstappen is now in penalty territory in terms of his ICE, his engine. He's gone beyond his allotment, and so he's going to start taking grid penalties if he keeps changing.
Yeah, and that's something that I think might happen next weekend, actually, at Spa. Because it will. That's where you can. It's been strong in the past, but if says there's no guarantee he climbs through that field easily, because it's just so much closer behind Red Bull, and now Red Bull, you'd have to say, behind McLaren.
All right, well, let's get a quick break in. And sorry, we got a short show today, guys, just one break, but we'll be back right after these messages. All right, let's check YouTube. Andy P's here. He's a happy boy with a front row lockout. He says, what a weird session, though. Yeah. David
That's
Lawrence
the way
here.
we like them.
Yeah. David Lawrence, mega Saturday for McLaren, looking good for a mega Sunday. Kevin Kelly's here. Joe of Oyster Bay. Troy Lewis, strategy will favor Norris over Oscar tomorrow, even if Oscar gets the lead. Done deal. Greets from London. Okay. Hey, Troy. And let's see who else. TW's here. And Andy P says only the 3rd front row lockout in their history. Wow.
Boy, that's hard to believe.
That can't be right.
No.
That Senna and Prost years, they had multiple.
Yeah, they would. Maybe
McLaren and
what are you thinking, Andy, in recent history?
Or maybe in Budapest?
Yeah, maybe so. Sorry for the Kleenex, guys, man. I'm battling COVID, so it's not been pleasant. Chris, yes, I guess the last time I saw you was wheel to wheel, and I was about to test. I tested positive, so I've been miserable all week.
Sorry to hear that.
I'm a little bit on the back side of it, but anyway.
Hey, since we're limited on time, let's not forget to look further back and see what guys like Ricardo and Hulkenberg and how about Logan Sargent up there in 14th, just behind his teammate Albon, and just ahead of them, Valtteri Bottas and the reluctant Sauber out qualifying the 2 guys that he's probably in competition for a seat at Williams next year with.
Yeah. How much we got, Casey? All right. Got 10 seconds here. All right. Here we go.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City. Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back. We've been talking about the McLaren team and some of the front runners. Let me just run down the entire qualifying session here. Lando Norris on pole, followed by Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, and Lance Stroll, and Daniel Ricciardo, Yuki Tsunoda in 10th after that big crash. Nico Hulkenberg, who just barely missed out on Q3 in 11th. Bottas, Albon, Logan Sargent 14th, Kevin Magnussen, Sergio Perez, George Russell, Zhou Guanyu, Esteban Ocon, and Pierre Gasly in 20th. And Bob, there's some good stories here coming down, looking down further behind. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Let's wave the stars and stripes. I think what Logan Sargent is very good. David Coulthard said on the F1 TV Pro that.
Sorry to cut you off, Bob. I always tell and I want to say congratulations, Andrea. It's 2012 in Brazil, I believe. Execute what looked like what was on the cards. The quickest team here.
Personally, but above all, I'm pleased men and women at McLaren had this important our trajectory. You reminded the 20 is a long time ago, so it's good McLaren to be in condition to score an important result, locking the front row in a track that definitely is good downforce. There's a density, high density. Our car works well, so we don't by this result, but we take it to try and capitalize tomorrow.
Maybe missing out in Silverstone on a chance determined you to write that.
Well, to be honest, the talked about for Silverstone external comments like was an opportunity to review. We could learn like we do pretty much after everything, and even when we have positive. True that in Silverstone with Oscar late and with Lando with the tire stint, we put our drive outside the direct contention for the review, allowed us to confirm our culture, our strong mindset to improve anytime we can. Looking forward to the next race, and here
and looking forward then is 1-2 the only with tomorrow as well from here.
Have Max Verstappen around.
Yeah.
When you have Ferrari, Hamilton, I think you have to be with. Max is always the driver in this kind of events. For instance, Mercedes, they have a different with two hard and one medium. There's many situations to go through tomorrow. Focused on ourselves, consider all those scenarios, and yeah, we could repeat results that we've been missing for place in the latest racing.
Tomorrow, and congratulations today.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Hey, Chris, you were dropping out quite a bit, but we got the gist of a good bit of that. Bob, did you hear the same thing I heard, where he basically was saying you're never safe with Max Verstappen hanging around behind you?
Well, sure. I mean, you can understand that. Then he was trying to tip the helmet to Ferrari and the other strong teams up there. It is very tight. Recall Silverstone just a couple of weeks ago, where basically 3 cars broke away from the field. And I think we're going to see another race like that tomorrow, although this is an entirely different racetrack. It looks, just looking at the times, that the McLarens, Verstappen, and Sainz, and we'll throw Hamilton in there too. He's just 0.6 and change off the lead. Leclerc's 6, 7, 8. There could be, 6 cars up there having a pretty good dice. And then, of course, you start pit stops and pit performance and the weather and everything else. I think it's going to be good fun.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, now I'll quickly paraphrase then what Andrea said. Right in the corner by the trucks they have.
Still losing you, Chris. It's weird. We're just losing like every 6th or 7th syllable. So
how strange. I've got you guys loud my end.
Yeah, we're definitely still losing you. I don't know what's going on. Well, I'm sorry about that, everybody. But
take off your tinfoil hat.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, look, we had, like you mentioned, Bob, Logan Sargent doing good, and Daniel Ricciardo ended up out qualifying Yuki Tsunoda, which we're watched that very closely with the silly season going on here because, with Checo Perez doing what he did today, I think, Chris and I talked about it on the Wheel to Wheel show, and he put me on the spot, and I said, team manager hat, I think I would on Wednesday, I would say, I'm sorry, Checo, but we're going to have to move on. And I think there's a lot of people saying that. So obviously, what does that do? Who ends up with that seat? And Liam Lawson's in the hunt there. Daniel Ricciardo, for some reason, it doesn't appear that Yuki Tsunoda is. But every race we got to watch Daniel Ricciardo versus Yuki Tsunoda, and Daniel out qualified Yuki today. What about you, Bob? What do you think is going to happen with that seat?
Boy, I wish I knew that. That's one of the hot questions of you can't put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. Suddenly, Ricciardo is starting to look like his old self. Suddenly, Tsunoda's falling back on bad ways. He's been very, very explicit, shall we say, on the radio with the team recently. And then he crashed today for reasons yet to be explained. And you got Liam Lawson banging on the door. And we've said this time after time. You've got talented guys trying to make their way into the group. So the team management has the luxury, if they have the resources, to really pick and choose among their drivers. And career longevity is going to become more and more rare unless you are constantly and repeatedly competitive out there.
Yeah. Well, hey, Chris has done a reset. Chris, I want to ask you about the Haas team. They've been so hot lately and so in the news and everything. I mean, it's just been all positive for them. And they just missed out today on Q3 with Nico Hulkenberg, qualifying 11th. What do you think about what's going on with Haas right now?
Yeah, Hulkenberg was 100th of a second off Lewis Hamilton, wasn't he, at the end of Q2? So close to getting through. I actually thought either he or Bottas were about to bump Hamilton, and somehow Hamilton just snuck through. Generally, it has been positive. We had the news, obviously, that Kevin Magnussen's going to leave. That was announced on Thursday morning. Got the heads up the day before about that, and that wasn't a surprise. It looks very much like Esteban Ocon's going to go in there, but I don't believe that's physically signed yet. I think they're waiting for that contract to come back their way. So, there still could be movement elsewhere, but it's still decent progress. This is a track that for Haas to be right there in that fight with the upgrades they brought at Silverstone as well, when a number of teams brought big upgrades here, I think that's a positive sign, and they'll be looking for more points tomorrow. And points are very hard to come by at the moment. So that's certainly, the fact they've scored 2 6th places in a row, we shouldn't get used to that. They were massive results. But just picking up 1 for 10th would be a big, big result. I'll quickly as well speed through now that I have my connection back, that I was following Laurent Mekies and Liam Lawson walking down the paddock, actually, just as we came back from our break. I was hoping to speak to them, but they were deep in conversation. Lawson looking very relaxed and smiling and laughing as they headed to the debrief, which will be both positive and negative. Big damage for Yuki Tsunoda's car to be repaired, but both cars in Q3 and Daniel Ricciardo getting himself P9 and being quickest in Q1 in the end, wasn't he? When Perez had crashed, was brilliant timing for him. There's 2 drivers that will have a chip on their shoulder to go out there tomorrow and prove to Red Bull that they deserve a Red Bull seat. And very finally, Andrea Stella, paraphrasing him, was that he was saying that they've executed everything that they needed to do, but the team didn't really focus too much on the outside noise, criticizing them after Silverstone and the mistakes they made there. They reinforced their culture, actually, is what he said. The way that they work, the way that they're open and honest with each other, to come here and then deliver straight away again by not really changing too much, just trying to execute properly. So he was actually just pleased to see them bounce back instantly. But he said this track really suits McLaren. So hopefully they take advantage tomorrow. And as you guys said, he said with Max Verstappen, they can never count him out.
Yeah. Well, we're almost out of time here. Any final thoughts on qualifying, Bob, before I give us the rundown for tomorrow?
I think it was a great show. I'll change my prediction. It won't be a 6-car battle up at the front. It'll be 3 cars because Norris, Piastri, and Verstappen are all about half a tenth apart. So I'm going to go ahead and suggest that Lando Norris is going to pick up another victory, followed by Verstappen. And I'm going to put Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari up there in 3rd.
Yeah, well, good. All right. Well, we'll We'll get final predictions, of course, right before the race tomorrow in our pre-race show, which will start at not 11 a.m. It will start at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning for the pre-race on 9 a.m. Eastern, and right here on SiriusXM, and then followed by the race with the BBC feed, and then immediately after that, our post-race show for a full hour. So stick with us, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.